Joining us now is the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey. Many things to talk to you about this morning, but we can't not begin with this. Can we, Mr Heappey? You heard that plea. It's a state of emergency as far as she is concerned, certainly as far as the family of little Olivia are concerned, and tragically, many other families right across the UK. Why isn't there a Cobra meeting when a 9-year-old has been killed in their own home?
Well, look, I mean, it is outrageous what happened in Liverpool and senseless. I mean, extraordinary that a 9-year-old should be killed in what appears to be an attempt to get after a gang leader, if the reporting is correct. I mean, just despicable. And what matters the most right now, and I'll come to your question, is that people who saw any of what happened need to come forward to Merseyside police with the information they have so that the people responsible for this despicable crime can be held to account. I'm not sure necessarily, given who sits on Cobra, that Cobra is the right group in which you would discuss this sort of policy matter, if I'm completely honest. I've sat on Cobra a number of times. What I think your contributor really is asking for is an urgent look by government at how knife and gun crime is tackled. And every time there is this sort of outrage, of course, those calls grow louder. It's horrendous what's happened. I'm absolutely certain that the Home Secretary, who in fairness yesterday was very quick to respond to what happened in terms of the call for information, but she, the Home Office, the Ministry of Justice will, of course, be looking at this and asking themselves questions about whether or not things more can be done to make crimes like this impossible.
I suppose the feeling is, and it was that you could hear the heart in there, that yes, you're a father, you know, you feel the pain, you fear something like this happening for your youngsters, just as we all do for everyone around us. But when you say, yes, we'll look into it, yes, we need information, it feels like those calls, as you rightly say, that grow louder just aren't being heard.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot has been done to address gun and knife crime. You'll forgive me, Kate, I hope, if I'm less knowledgeable on that as a policy area than the ammunition requirements of the Ukrainian armed forces and how we help them to push Russia out of their country. But as a constituency MP, I would simply reflect that, you know, even in apparently relatively peaceful areas like Somerset, you still find incredible outrages where lives are taken with knives. And, you know, it is a scourge because gun control is one thing. And actually the UK, I think, has very good gun control laws, notwithstanding that there are still too many shootings. But with knives, it is, you can't ban knives. Lots of knives are needed in homes for cooking and for other purposes. But the carriage of knives has become so widespread that very obviously something needs to be done. Now, my understanding is from speaking to my great friend Kit Malthouse, the policing minister, over the last year or two, you know, they've been doing great work on this. And you know,
Mr. Heappey, sorry to interrupt you. You are here to talk a little bit about Ukraine, and I assure you we'll get there. When I think about what Lorraine was saying, she may not have identified the correct place to have a conversation in Cobra. She wants to talk to government because what she's saying is that there is a crisis on. We have a cost of living crisis. A child was killed in her own living room whilst being shielded by her mother. The barristers are on strike. The rail workers are on strike. The dockers are on strike. Sir, where is our government? At the moment, we have a Prime Minister who is AWOL and the next two potential Prime Ministers who are battling out against each other. This is a moment to sit down and have a meeting because there is a state of emergency. Do you disagree with that, sir?
As in to sit down and have a Cobra, or to sit down and have a meeting with your contributor?
To speak to the government,
take control of the crisis that we feel here, as much as we absolutely feel the horror for those in Ukraine. So unfortunately, I think the empathy may start to wane if the government doesn't deal with what feels like a crisis on, as Rob so brilliantly listed, on so many fronts.
So I think government is in work. I mean, it is the fact is that I am a minister within the government, and I have, with the exception of I think about 7 days, been in my office all the way through the parliamentary recess so far. And across government, other ministers are doing likewise. Yes, of course, every time one of the more prominent members of the government goes on holiday, it makes news, but that ignores that lots of other members of prominent members of the government
It's not really just that. Sorry to interrupt you again, Ms. Heappey, but it's not really just that. It's not about holidays over the summer. You all need holidays. It's about the fact that we have this very unusual and odd vacuum. You are now backing Liz Truss in the leadership contest. We don't know what she's going to do about the cost of living crisis. There was initially a suggestion there was going to be a budget. Now it's called a financial event. I mean, what on earth is that for people to get their heads round? And, of course, they have to stand up and set out their stalls so the members of your party can vote on it. In the meantime, the rest of us across the nation, who have no control over who's going to be the next Prime Minister, are screaming at government, please do something.
So and there's lots of questions you've asked, and I'm not really getting to answer them, but I don't accept the premise that the government is not in work. The government is in work, because I'm here and ministers across Whitehall are in their offices and making sure that the business of government continues to be done. You are right to observe that there are lots of things that are going on in our country right now that are causing the British public an enormous amount of concern, from the tragic death of Olivia in Liverpool through to the cost of living and through to all of the industrial action that is flowing from inflation and wage demands that come from those groups as a consequence. Now, all of that, less the death of Olivia, which clearly is just absolutely senseless, mindless, and the responsibility of the individual involved. But the rest of it is all connected, because inflation is a consequence of the pandemic and the reawakening of the global economy, quickly followed by a war in Ukraine.
Mr. Heappey, understand, please.
I'd really love to answer your questions, if I may,
you've done your best. These are televised interviews. You'll understand there's opportunity for you to have party political broadcasts.
It wasn't about
let me just ask you this, sir. Let's just come into the province of the area that you deal with. One thing you and I and millions up and down the country, if not everybody, will agree on is how proud we are of our armed forces. And to be fair to the government, the fact is I stood on that border and saw people crossing from Ukraine into Poland. They thanked Britain for the extraordinary work of the Ministry of Defence getting the weaponry that the Ukraine government needs to fight off Russia's illegal invasion. And they're proud, especially people up and down our country, of those men and women who place their lives on the line to keep us free. No doubt you'll be able to comment on the work that you continue to do to make sure that Ukraine's got the weaponry that they need. But when it comes to our veterans, our servicemen and women, brilliant as they are, yesterday we were told that the cost of living wasn't going to be protected for them. And the reality was, even though they may be provided some shelter and some living accommodation, they weren't going to be afforded protection when it came to the price of heating their homes. Surely you don't support that, and you're going to make sure that they're protected. Those are the best of who we are as a nation.
I'm not familiar with the thing you're referring to, Rob. Sorry, could you explain what that was?
Yesterday, we were told that the cap on energy was potentially going to go up to £5,000. It's going to be the price of inflation. Can you assure all those who are veterans are going to be protected? And so the cost of living, most especially when it comes to energy, is not going to apply to those who risk their lives to keep us free.
I don't think there's any realistic mechanism through which the Ministry of Defence could seek to make an intervention for veterans that wouldn't apply to the wider population. I think that government as a whole is taking steps to ease the cost of living challenge for the population as a whole. I think rightly there has been debate over whether a blanket cap is a fair way to use taxpayers' money when it isn't targeted. But as attractive as that sounds to the Armed Forces Minister, I don't know how it would be possible to do something for veterans but not the rest of society.
Well, that seems interesting to me, not least because I know that you'd want to champion them, and it seems to me that they should be, frankly, on the front line. And first to receive the best service. Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Heappey, and for your time.
Thank you.
My pleasure.